Okay, brilliant. Once again, a very good evening to all of you and a warm welcome to the Founder Fundamentals series and this particular workshop on pricing your product and service, which is hosted by Whitespace and the Markham Small Business Center. I'm Alina and I'm the Student and Community Engagement Coordinator at Whitespace, and I will be your facilitator for today. Very quickly, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, who are joining us for the first time, we are York University's entrepreneurship hub, and we consist of several incubator and accelerator programs that are designed to support entrepreneurs like yourself from different sectors. We have two major portfolios, the technology and the food and beverage portfolio. We also run two diverse streams, the Whitespace Ella program that supports women-led businesses and the Black Entrepreneurship Alliance for Black-led businesses. We offer these programs to support the needs of founders at different life stages of a venture. And through these programs, entrepreneurs have access to one-on-one dedicated mentorship, knowledge-based workshops, and lots of networking opportunities. I do want to mention that all our programs and services are completely free and are open to the broader community. So I encourage you to make the most of all the resources that are available to you. If you wish to learn more about our program, there is a QR code on the screen right now that will give you very quick and easy access to all our services and how you can get in touch with us. But you can essentially follow us on socials or a newsletter. But the best way to get in touch with us is through an idea consultation, because that's more one-on-one. We go through your business needs and we'll be able to provide more curated resources around that. Coming to the Founder Fundamental program, this is a 12-week educational program, and our ultimate goal is to provide you with the basic skills and understanding that is required to start your entrepreneurial career. Please do remember that those of you who attend 9 out of 11 of these sessions and attend each session for over 60 minutes will receive a Whitespace York University certificate of recognition. There is nothing that you need to do at your end. Zoom is able to provide me with your login and logout details. All I request you to do is to make sure that you're joining in with your full name, so I'm able to identify you when I'm doing the attendance. I see there's somebody with iPhone, so a request to just make sure that you're joining this with your full name. I also want to express my deepest gratitude to all those people who are working behind the scene to make this series a possibility. In particular, I would like to thank Nafis Ahmed, Entrepreneurship Manager at Whitespace, who has helped shape up this series. And of course, our brilliant marketing team for their efforts to reach out to all of you. I would also like to extend our special gratitude to our partners, the Markham Small Business Center, for providing this support with the series. And I would like to invite Serena to say a few words with me.
Hi, thank you, Alina. This is Serena from the City of Markham Small Business Center. Welcome everyone to being this session. For those of you who don't know MSBC, we provide trainings, one-on-one consultations, and grant programs for local businesses to help them from 0 to 1. If you want to know more information, please go on our website. And we are having upcoming grant programs. For the students, we offer $3,000 as a grant, and for the adults and the full-time entrepreneur, we offer $5,000. So please reach out to me, and we can have a chat. Thank you, Alina.
Thank you, Serena. Perfect. Amazing. Moving on. Like always, I just want to give you a quick sneak peek into what's in store for next week. We have a session on what you should know when it comes to taxes, and with the tax season going on right now, this session comes extremely timely to provide you with the support and help when you're looking into your business taxes. And even if you're not at the stage where you're filing your taxes, I think it's good to know information when you do get to that stage and things to keep in mind from now onwards. So when you do start filing your taxes, you're not scramming and struggling. And we are honored to have Bilal Rizvani, partner at M&P, to lead the session. So we're really hoping that you all will make out to it as well next Tuesday. And with that, now finally to our workshop tonight. It is going to be a great evening and one that we're super excited. And we got multiple requests to do this particular session. So super excited for this. But a couple of housekeeping rules to remember. Because this is a larger group, I'm going to request you all to please make sure your mics are muted, especially when the speaker is presenting. However, like I said at the beginning of the session, let's make this super interactive, super engaging. So share your questions in the chat. Use your raise your hand feature if you have any questions, and then we can ask you to unmute and ask your question. Having said that, we do have dedicated question answer session towards the end as well. So we'll be addressing those. And now, without any further delay, I would like to introduce a wonderful facilitator for today, Tara Longo. Tara Longo is a business advisor at the One Business and Entrepreneurship Center. She is an entrepreneur herself with a deep passion for food. In early 2005, she became a leader in the food industry by opening the first certified organic retail store in Ontario called The Healthy Butcher. Over the next 15 years, she expanded into 3 locations in Toronto and Kitchener and opened an online grocery delivery business as well. Tara has been recognized for her accomplishments several times, including Impact Green Entrepreneur of the Year Award, Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, Star Women in Grocer, and Excellence in Corporate Responsibility Award. Tara, we are super lucky to have you here to facilitate the session, and I welcome you to begin.
Amazing. Thank you. I don't even need to do an introduction because you did such a great introduction. Welcome, everybody. Let me share my window and we will start. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay, yes. Perfect. So I have this presentation, but please interrupt me as we go. I think it's easier for all of you to get your questions in as we're going versus coming back to stuff. So maybe, Alina, if you can just like cut me off when there's questions or whatever, that would be great. So I saw some of your names come up, and some of you I've met before, which is amazing, through various programs. So I hope it's not repetitive tonight, but I put a lot of content in here. So I hope you all find great value in this. So without further ado, I just added this screen in for this presentation tonight because a lot of times I'm starting a presentation with somebody and people have no idea what my background is or where I came from. So I know Alina gave you a really good intro there, but the picture on the right, that's my first store, The Healthy Butcher, in 2005. So I was originally an investment banker on Bay Street, left my finance position because I thought, oh my God, imagine if I worked this hard for myself, what I could do. So that entrepreneurial spirit was born. And I opened my first store in 2005. So that's the kind of the purple one there. In 2008, the one on the bottom left, the gray one, that was at Avenue in Eglinton that we opened. And you know, over the years, just expanded. That's a picture of us, our whole team, receiving the Best of Toronto by Now magazine as the butcher shop. The Real Food Toronto truck in there. We were the first to do online grocery delivery to people's houses in Toronto. And this is like pre-grocery delivery. So, as you guys can see through the pictures over the years, that the business changes and business will always change and nothing stays the same in business. And they just want you to keep that in the back of your head, because if you have started before COVID, you know that your business now is nowhere at all close to what it was when you started. So, just keep that in mind, that things need to change and grow and move. So without further ado, we are here tonight because you have a business and you have a product or service and you want to make sure that the pricing is correct. How do you sell things at the right price? And how do you sell at the right price, whether it's retail, in a store, or online? And I'm here to talk about 3 elements tonight, okay? First is we're going to look at the cost elements. And these are things like fixed, variable costs, but we're going to look at margins, taxes, and others. The second thing we're going to look at is the unit economics. So how you compare to your competitors and the value you create, which is going to be a really interesting section of tonight's presentation. And the last thing is the markup for various channels. If you're new, starting up, how do you mark up these products? How do you distribute? How do you promote them, whether it's a retail store or somewhere else? So, just keep that in mind. So, people say to me, Tara, are you an expert on these areas? No, I'm not an expert at all. I'm not going to profess to be an expert, but I did run a retail business for 16 years, and we opened 3 very diverse locations, and I went through the financial crisis of 2008, and then, we had a Subway being built right in front of our shop, which totally dropped our business 15% within one day. So we pivoted multiple times over the years, and with each pivot, we would have to do some price adjusting, some price correcting. And in my current work, I'm really passionate about helping companies like yours not make the same mistakes I did. So I think we have about an hour to go through this tonight, with lots of time for questions. So again, please interrupt me, and I'll put my email address up at the end, so you can always reach out to me with further questions. Please, if you work on your pricing model after this and you want me to take a quick look at it, like I'm here for you guys, so it's fine. So if we could get like a quick few quick comments in the chat about what kind of businesses people have, and we can come back to that like in another slide. Maybe that might be helpful, just like if it's a product or service, you guys, and if it's like new or old, or just like, new product, barbecue sauce, something like that in the chat. That would be great, because that will help us ultimately going through this presentation. Okay, service consulting, perfect. Okay, I love it. Keep them coming. So ultimately, we're here tonight to address one issue, which is price. And this is the element of your business that will have the greatest impact on your profitability. Like, just think about that for a second. There is something you can control that will affect your profits. Okay, you can't control your labor costs very much. I mean, people need to get paid a certain wage. You can't control your rent, but the price is something that you can control. So always something to keep in the back of your head, that if the numbers are not working out, there's still the price option. So in order to really understand pricing in our goal tonight, we need to really understand all the elements that go into your pricing, okay? And I've got fixed costs, variable costs, margins, taxes, and break-even quantity. And before we start with the fixed costs, let me take a quick look in the chat here and see what some of the things we've got. Okay, new food products, flatbread, marketing, software, landscaping design, residential design. Okay, so we've got a big mix of like products and services. Okay, so this is great. So I'll make sure I'll kind of try to gear everything towards all of you. I love the food people. You guys are right up my alley. That's perfect. I know how to help you. Property, tech, real estate. Okay, software. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's get on to the first thing. So fixed costs. Most of you are not from a finance background. Most entrepreneurs have no idea on the financials of their business, which myself, coming from a finance background, I'm going to tell you there's nothing more important than you need to know about your business. Okay, so if you're not a finance person, you better quickly learn what you need to do and how to do it and make sense of it all, because it's going to be one of the most important things in your business. Now, the fixed costs are obviously those costs that don't change with the amount of sales. Okay, so my examples on here are rent, utilities, or executive salaries. Those things are fixed. You can't change them. Now, your variable costs are those that are going to change with your production levels. So they're going to change with the amount you produce or the amount you bill if you're a service company. And that's going to be raw materials, production labor, freight, any portion of machinery, that sort of thing. So if you are a service company, your labor is going to be your variable cost in there. Okay. Now, I put up this variable cost example, and this is pure on from my healthy butcher days here, because I just made it easy for me. This is an example of a sausage recipe, and you can do a variable cost example like this for any business that you have. Okay, and it's really crucial to help you determine what your costs are. How can you price your product if you don't know what your cost is? You can't. Okay, so this is like step one. Now, let me walk you through my example here. So, I've got the date at the top. I've got the 2 staff members that worked on making this particular sausage, okay? And I've got the ingredients. I've got the FL trim, that's beef trim. I got pork fat. I've got soy sauce, like you can see all the ingredients. And then the weight and a calculated cost. So this is like just simple Excel calculating. Then I've got labor hours, and it's $20 in here because it took 1 hour of labor. Okay, and I've got the total cost, the finished weight, the cost per pound. I'm going to retail it at $13.99 a pound. It cost me $7.74 a pound. So I can calculate my margin. I'll come back to the margin in a second. But when you set up a costing example like this, okay, you don't just do them. You need to analyze them. Okay, and I want you to take a look at them in detail and say, what would happen if I change this? what would happen if I changed this ingredient? If I changed the way we produced? In this particular instance, in my particular case here, if I doubled the quantity I was making, my labor costs would stay the same. It didn't matter if I was producing 5 pounds or 10 pounds of the sausage. It took so much labor to get everything set up and to get it going. So this is very applicable to a lot of businesses. If you're producing, a food item, there were some people with food things or launching a line of snacks, whether you're producing 10 or 30, potentially your labor is the exact same. And that's really important to know, because those are things that are going to tweak your profitability and your pricing going forward. Okay. Also thing to look at, is what are the most expensive ingredients on here, or what are the most expensive components of your variable costs? If you remove something, what's going to happen to that? Is it going to change the product? Do people care? Is it really that important? If it reduces your cost by 50%, maybe it's worth it. But again, something else to think about depending on what you're offering in the products and services that you're offering. I recently worked with a lady who owned a juice company, and she didn't have any of these calculations done. She was just starting up. She was selling juice to her local church. She would make them on Saturday night and bring them to the church on Sunday morning and sell them. And when I started working through one of these with her, she started to cry because she had no idea of what her costing was. And so every single juice she sold, she was losing money on it, but she didn't know. She didn't see it that way until she did this. So again, I'm not going to, reiterate this too many more times, just like every 10 minutes in this presentation. Know this, right? The last line on here is very important. So this is the gross margin, and I'm going to get you the calculation of it on the next slide. So margins. Again, this is going back to our terminology on our pricing. So margins are what you have left to pay your expenses. So if you think of, an income statement, you've got your revenue at the top, you've got the profit from what you made, and then you've got all the fixed expenses below that. So margins are what you have left to pay those expenses. So a margin is calculated by the retail price minus the cost divided by the retail price. So let me give you an example. I'm selling my barbecue sauce for $12.99. Cost me $6.74 to calculate it, divided by divided by $12.99. It leaves me 50.2%. That means I have a gross margin of 50.2%, and I have that much on each product left to cover the expenses, marketing, rent, etc. Those numbers are really important to know. Depending on what industry you're in, bankers will look at those numbers, financiers will look at those numbers, and other competition. They're great numbers to look at because they can see that you are producing something cheaper or better, or offering something cheaper or better than somebody else. If it was the same product, right? I'm comparing like products here. So you can Google, your industry, environmental engineering, and you can Google what the margin ranges are on certain companies, and that will really help you out. Does anybody have any questions so far before I go on? Yes, Goldie or Gold.
The last page, is that the 50% that you will pay in terms
Nope. That's
of,
what you have left.
That's what you have left after you pay?
No, that's what you have left on just the product or service side, and then you still have to pay like taxes, rent, those sorts of things after that.
So what does the I'm not following. I know this is, but
so no, we're going back. So let's look at this slide. So I put it's the retail price minus the cost of the product. So let's just go back to my sausage. I put a number here. Let's say I sold, my retail price is $12.99. Okay, and it cost me $6.74 to make one. So that difference, that $3, and then I divide it by my retail price, it leaves me 50.2%. That is your gross margin.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Anybody else? Okay, I think Alina has the slides too. So she, if she hasn't already sent them around, she can send them around later too, so everybody can have the calculations. Okay. Okay, So now I am on to taxes. So this slide, is questionable whether it belongs in here, because I feel like once you have a product, you know whether it needs to be taxed or not. But again, I've had experiences where people haven't known if they need to tax their products or not. Okay. So there are certain things, you can read, go on the Canada Revenue Agency website, and you can put on, categories for tax, and it'll tell you like taxable supplies, 0, rated, or exempt. Okay. And you're going to fall into one of those. Most basic groceries are not taxed, right? And people need to be aware of that. Taxes are important because when you're rolling out a new product and you want it to, or not even a new product, let's just say you're rolling something out and you want it to be under a certain price point. Again, make sure that you're looking at things with the full cost to the customer, right? Because you don't want to price something at $15 and then have to add tax to it, pricing you potentially above and beyond all the other competitors in the same industry because you forgot that tax is being added on there. So just, really make sure you've got the right information before you set your final pricing. Break-even quantity. So it flows that just like your costs, you would want to know your break-even quantity, okay? And this is important if you're manufacturing anything. You want to know how long it's going to take you to recoup the expenses. So break-even quantity, I just put an example down here. Let's say your fixed costs are rent, $30,000. We've got $120,000 of office salaries, $6,000 of utilities. You're going to get $156,000 in fixed expenses. My price is $20 a unit. My costs, I wrote them all there, ingredients, labor, machinery, packaging are $8. So my break-even quantity is going to be all my fixed costs, the $156,000 minus the $12, which is my profit. So I need to get 13,000 units a year just to break even. Those are interesting things if you're producing, those are interesting calculations if you're producing something, because it will really help when you're expanding or growing or even looking at leasing or renting a spot for the first time. You'll know in the back of your head how busy you need to be in order to justify this expense. So that's great. Similarly, you can use this for the service companies, right? Again, rent, office, those sorts of things, office salaries for like admin staff or whatever. What are the fixed costs you need to cover? And so you can back that up and say, I need to have so many service appointments or service revenue per month in order to cover the fixed costs. So there's really two terms that I think are crucial when people are pricing, and those are MSRP and MAP, okay? And those are typically applied to bricks and mortars, retailers, or distributors, and everybody's operating at the same level. So MSRP is the manufacturer's suggested retail price, okay? That is what you, as the manufacturer, are saying, I want this sold at. A MAP price, is the minimum advertised price. And that's the lowest you want your product to be sold at. So when we had the Healthy Butcher, we sold knives. We sold high-end knives. We had a beautiful, we thought, what better company to sell knives than butchers, right? So we had a beautiful wall with a whole bunch of different knife brands. And all the big knife brands would have both of these, the MSRP and the MAP, okay? Because they didn't want the price to change between stores. They wanted you to, if you were buying a Victorinox knife, it was the same price everywhere in the city. So that's why they set those minimum advertised prices, because that's what they wanted. They wanted to keep the image at the certain price. So for you, when you're setting prices, think it should be a similar process. If you're going into stores or retailers or distributors, you want everyone selling your product at the same price. However, I'm going to say this, but I'm going to put a caveat, because later on, there obviously is different pricing across the boards in different areas. Like you think about, buying an ice cold water on Canada Day in the middle of the parade. Somebody's going to charge you $5 for it, where normally it's only $1, right? So those sorts of things get thrown out of the window sometimes. But just keep that in mind that, this is expected in terms of retailers and having these prices. Now, that being said, there's ways to reduce your pricing and to get, promotions being done about the products. So you could say, like, my minimum price is, $6.99, but I'm going to give you like a one-time discount because I want you to bring it in and still sell it at the $6.99 and have you make what you want to make on it, right? So we used to have things like case stack deals at the front of the stores where we would buy 20 or 40 cases of product to build a big display at the front, and we would obviously expect different pricing on that so we could pass those savings on to our customers and really promote the product, right? In terms of the retail price, so the retail price, make sure you have enough for your share, your distributor, and the retailer's share. So I often get asked questions from people. How do I know what to price my product at? Okay, you need to make sure you satisfy all three of those and all three people on there are happy. Okay, a distributor is typically going to take, depending on what you are, 20 to 35%, on your product. Sometimes 30 to 40. Places like Costco take less, but then that's a whole other different level of, of product and marketing and service that you need to provide to that store. So just make sure, as you're setting your pricing now, that you're leaving room for all three of those components. Okay. Any questions?
I think we're good for now.
Okay. Perfect. Sorry, I'm just looking at more of the products from people. Awesome. Okay. So now we're on to the crux of the presentation here. Now we've got some of the terms down packed. And how do we compare to competitors now? Okay. How do you price as a small company? Now, ultimately, most companies throw their hands up and price things in two different ways. Okay. The first is that they use cost plus pricing. So let's go back to, our original example. I have $6.50 in variable costs. I think I have like $1.50 in overhead. That's like my rent. I want to make 15%. Okay, I'm going to price it at $9.20. And that's called cost plus pricing. You just take your costs, you add your margin on top of it. I want 15% profit, and that's what I'm at. The other way small companies price is they just match their competitors' pricing. Okay, and that is what I do not want you to do. Okay, I do not want you to ever match your competitors' pricing. And I'm going to tell you why. You are all here tonight and you've all started a business. And you've all started a business because you have a personal need or a passion, or there's something that you've created that isn't out there. Okay, that is the value of your product. That is why you're doing this. So you're not the same. You are not the same as everybody else. So why would you price your product the same as everyone else? Now I'm going to say that that's with a caveat. People need to know why they're paying the price for your product. Okay, so although let's say I'm offering a tiger nut milk, because I know that came up in there. I know, although I'm offering a tiger nut milk, why is my tiger nut milk better than somebody else's? Why are people buying it? Is it gluten-free? Is it organic? Is it easily digestible by celiacs? Is it, what are the benefits to that? And when you can really hone in on those details, you will justify your pricing. Okay, so that is why I do not want you to match your competitors' pricing. So small companies typically do cost plus or match your competitors. But now we're going to take a look at some factors to help you determine pricing. Okay, so I know a lot of you have heard about value and value proposition. I briefly touched on the last slide. But the value of your project is going to be determined by many factors, such as this whole list here. Okay, so I've got costs. Make sure you've established all the costs of your products. Okay, don't guess like we talked about. It's common sense. Make sure all your costs are in there. And if you even, let's say drive your personal car to do deliveries, a portion of your personal car should be put in the cost of doing the delivery. Okay, so all of these little details, that's all an expense of the business. Another way that your costs are going to be, that your pricing is going to be affected is by consumers' perceptions, okay? Again, of the value. People sometimes assume that the more that they pay, the more that they get. Sometimes it's true, and sometimes it's not. Think about the Dyson vacuum cleaners, right? That rolled out maybe 10 years ago, right? They went bangbusters in the market. Best vacuum out there. And you know what? I think that they are. I have one, and I think it's amazing. And they are unapologetic about the price because they know it is superior to every vacuum out there. So they're not trying to match the $3.99 Canadian Tire Specialist. No, I'm going to set my price at $7.99, and it's the best. And that is the consumer perception of that. And that is how I'm going to price. Competition. Okay. Again, as mentioned on the last slide, you price as your competition. You cannot price as your competition. And I'll give you a perfect example. When we opened up, my ground beef, I don't know, I think it retailed for $6.99. Okay. By the time I sold my business 16 years later, my ground beef retailed for $12.99 a pound. But when we first started, people came in, oh, your ground beef is $5.99 at Metro, it's 99 cents a pound. I don't even know how to react, right? Like, it's not even the same product. Mine is hormone and antibiotic free. It's locally raised. It's got all certified organic feed. It's butchered in-house. It's dry. It's like the list, I could go on and on and on about the differences, right? But people don't necessarily know those differences unless you make it part of your story, right? So again, you have to put the information out there as to why your product is priced a certain way. So don't match your competitors because it's not the same price, okay? Environmental and technological factors. So, this is, I'm not going to spend much time on it, but, you think about certain things like organic or gluten-free or fair trade, or one of the new ones I've seen is like the minimum living wage now for people being employed. Those are all things that companies and your businesses and organizations can do, which will affect the pricing, because ultimately some of those things cost them more money, and again, it's justifying the pricing. Technologically, okay, this is another interesting factor, and I'll give you an example. So Gillette, I don't know when people remember when Gillette built that Mach 3 razor. I don't know, it was probably like 20 years ago. They spent $750 million developing this product, okay? It was like more blades. I think it had 4 blades. And so, then they spent so much money developing it, and they couldn't keep up with the technological advance because everybody else was just like, oh, they put 4 blades, we're going to put 4 blades now too, right? So their technological pricing that they spent so much money on didn't do them any benefit because people could just copy that. So these are like interesting things to keep in the back of your mind. If you're spending a ton on technological advancement, it might be easily replicated and not help you keep the price up there, right? So, those people, especially in the service industry, keep that in mind. And the last thing here is on demand. Demand is going to affect the pricing, right? I wouldn't necessarily say that the cheaper it is, the more people want it, right? It doesn't necessarily work that way. So you think about a gas station, where it's 20 cents cheaper a liter to go down here. Some people will drive that way to go save the 20 cents, but some people in their heads are like, I'm not driving 30 minutes to go save 20 cents a liter, right? It's just not worth it. So, it's not demand, it's, demand will play a role in affecting your pricing. Okay. That's a big slide, but I hope I gave you some tangible things to take away from it, right? As in to how these things will affect your pricing. So let me take a quick sip of water.
Tara, while you do that, I just want to check with Tamara because I saw her hand go up and then immediately down. So just want to check if she had a question.
Hi, yes, thank you. I did. I just wondered if you had any advice on how to keep abreast of the, like, when you're working with a commodity and the product, the prices of your raw materials keep fluctuating up and down, even like so one of my questions is I have figured out my cost of goods, but now we're in a new year. So should I automatically like be increasing that by like 3 to 5%? And should I constantly, do that? Well, yeah,
So
that's my main.
I say no to the constant price increases, but since you have your costs down in your head, when you get to the margin part at the bottom, let's say you want to make a 50% margin, okay? What I would do is when you're done those calculations, I would say, okay, I am okay as long as oranges stay at $3.99 a pound or under. If they go over $3.99 a pound, I know then that my margin is severely affected and I have to adjust my price. Okay. So you know how I said you take a look at those numbers and you analyze them. You don't just complete them, but you analyze them. Some of your core ingredients, have those in the back of your head as to when you need to be price sensitive and when you need to change. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So, I didn't necessarily mean the price because what I'm thinking is the margin. Like, what I'm trying to avoid is having to kind of calculate my costs when it comes down to the raw materials over and over again. And I guess what I'm thinking is just, once I enter a new year, I should just increase what my costs are to kind of know where I stand, just from a quick view. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I wouldn't adjust any pricing unless you need to.
Okay.
Because it does two things. Number one, anyone who's retailing it, you need to go and explain it to them and get them to ensure that they're increasing the pricing. And it's kind of always annoying. But number two, like customers will notice, and if things have gotten, like, why would you increase every year even if things haven't gone up? If things have gone
No,
up, that makes sense. But if
what
they
about
haven't,
what about from a forecasting perspective? Like, I think that's what I'm trying to say. So I'm not increasing the bottom line, the price, but I'm
yeah.
trying to just gauge things. And, when I think about the cost of inflation, should I always be attributing that like my costs, not my prices, I'm saying the wrong thing. My costs are getting more and more expensive every year. Is that something that I should do, or should I always do a deep dive to analyze like what I'm paying on average for, apples for the year?
I would do a deep dive every 6 months.
Okay.
And maybe you set that as your parameter. You make sure
Okay.
from January to July you're good. Maybe in July you readjust, because if not, you're going to get bogged down by doing it all the time, right?
Right.
What I was
Okay.
trying to say is have like a range in your head. Some of your core ingredients. Obviously, if your main ingredient is going up by double midway through the 6-month cycle, you need to change something, right? Because you don't want to be selling it as at a lower margin for the next 3 months, right? So have some of the core things in your head that you have to watch out for, probably in like every batch, I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. That's so helpful. Thank you.
Brian, I know you have a couple of questions in the chat as well. Do you just want to unmute yourself and ask here?
Sure. Hi, Tara. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So I'll start with the one that's maybe more relevant to what we were just talking about. And I was wondering if there's like a magic margin, like, let's say from an investor's standpoint, right? That will look at a margin and say, you know what? Yeah, I don't know. That's not really enough. Or they'll look at that margin and say, you know what? Now that's a viable business that I would consider investing in. Like
Yes,
in this day and age, right? In this day and age, in this marketplace, is there like a magic margin?
there is, but it's very industry specific.
Okay.
So I can't give you a margin on, on a bunch of different things because they're all very different.
So, okay, I'll play devil's advocate. Why would not 20% be 20% across the board after, or 40% profit, either a tech company or a product company? Isn't profit, or why would it vary by industry?
Well, I think it depends on how many potential things are coming out underneath there and how many things potentially need to get written off. So if I back it up to my grocery industry, my produce department, sorry, that's not a good one. Let me think. A product that I would have a high wastage on would have a very high margin.
Okay.
Because I had to make up for throwing half of it away.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think if you were to talk about like the fashion industry, same thing. What you roll out at the start of the season, if you're not selling it by the end of the season, all that stuff is gone or like at a zero value and it's all written off, right? So the margin on the part that you sold has to be enough to cover what gets written off.
Got it. Now it makes sense. Okay.
I just heard of like, for example, Adidas, I think it was Adidas. They just, for the first time in 32 years, declared a loss of $32 billion or something ridiculous because they wrote off that line of clothing with that rapper who, you know, was in the newspaper. I can't even remember the guy's name, but they had a clothing line with him and it didn't sell. They pulled it when he did the bad stuff. And so they pulled the whole line and they wrote the whole thing off. They would never expect to do that, right? So
Understood. Yeah.
this is why, you know, different industries have different margins.
So the next question I have, and I don't know if you could sort of comment on it, or is because sometimes, and my company is an online type of business, and I'm actually tossing around the idea of a freemium service, a freemium-based model. Don't know how to price something like that out, and if that's something that maybe we could speak to now, or maybe that's something for like another time.
What does that mean, a freemium business? What does that mean?
It's more like you offer a base service at no cost. So basically you try and get people to register and use, let's say,
Yep.
a basic type of service, and then you have premium services that you would you know, let's say that they would charge more for. Like in my case, let's say for like an add-on. Yes, thank you. Like an add-on. Yeah.
Okay.
So I wouldn't know how to price something like that. I don't know if that's something that we would want to get into now, or if it's something you would comment on. But
listen, it's no different. It's no different than any product-based business, right? Because ultimately, you've got stuff at the low end, which is making like little or no margin, and you've got stuff that you're making high margin on, right? Your add-ons you're going to make money on. The free part you're going to make nothing on. So what you need to do is when you need to think about this, you need to think about the whole business and what you want to make on the bottom to see how that pricing would work out, right? Let's say you want to make $100,000 a year in the business. Okay, how many add-ons do I need to sell? How many frees do I need to give out in order to get those add-ons, right? And build that business model out that way. You're going to work backwards.
And I think that was something to do with, you'd have to sort of monitor your metrics, right? Like you'll know you've done 1,000 memberships, and of that, you know, 50%
will,
an add-on,
correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay.
And those are all the assumptions you're going to have to make, you know, and you make the model and you model it out, you know, to be flexible. Okay, well, let's say I only get 30% of these people now adding on versus the 50%. What happens to the numbers? Where do I have to go? And you can build that into your model, right?
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, perfect.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
No problem.
Tara, there are a couple of questions in the chat as well. Do you want to take them now, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Zubin is saying, is there a formula to know how much to pay yourself? What are the percentages or any other factors to think about?
Yeah, so to pay yourself, yes, you need to pay yourself. At a minimum, you need to pay yourself minimum wage because if you didn't do this part of the work, somebody else was going to have to do that. I say that, and then I know it's really hard for entrepreneurs to put that in their financial forecasting, but you're going to have to, right? Because ultimately, you're not doing it for free. So set yourself some goals, and you know, and work towards the salary that you want to get paid, right?
Got it. And then Faria is asking, are the price points 9.99, 49.99, are they still holding true as guidelines?
No, they're not. They're not. There's like a whole lot of articles and things written about that. And I mean, most people see past that now, so it's not really there. Yeah, I'm neither here nor there about it. I guess it depends on what you're selling and what industry you're in, right? Like, you know, if you're at a farmer's market and selling something, like you're just going to round it up, it's $15 or whatever, you know, but yeah.
Got it. And then Alice has a question, how do these write-off affect our taxes?
They don't, because it's just an expense. It's just an expense your business has incurred and you've never gotten revenue on it. So and the crux of it, it's going to be inventory, which you have never sold. So it's going to be, you know, at the end of the year, if you count your inventory, your beginning and your ending inventory, you're going to have a lower ending inventory, but you're not going to have any revenue for it. So it's going to be probably a once in a year write-off, but it's not coming off of your financial statement. It's coming off of your balance sheet.
Great, thank you. Faria, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Tara. Just as a follow-up, because I'm like developing basically a bra for, sorry, I don't know if it's echoing on my side. So I'm developing basically a bra for plus size breast owners and coming up with prototypes. And the idea is that it is going to be a premium bra because it is like 3 layers of very heavy fabric, and you know, it's designed in a certain way that hopefully I can patent. But you know, everyone, I'm stuck because it's like, do I go over that 99.99 or do I have to stay under it? Because likely if I stay under it, my profit margins are going to be cut by a lot.
Sorry, where did you get the 99.99 from?
Lower you on Dragon's Den.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Listen, I think there's women out there who will spend a lot, and there's probably women that'll spend a lot less. If you're going to go for the $150 price point, again, you just need to build a really good story as to why it's $150, right? So if it's all made in Canada, you know, certified fair trade materials from across the world, like all of those things need to be in the selling point to justify that price. So yes, I wouldn't just go there and make it $149.99 without that story. But I think there's enough ways for you to differentiate the product to justify the price where it is.
Thank you. That's really
Amazing. So we're all caught up on the questions. So
okay, cool. So we are at differentiation. So, you know, this kind of was just what we were saying right now.
Went wrong. Please try again.
Sorry, my phone just decided to start talking to me for some reason. Okay, so just like we were talking about the price point, you know, differentiate yourself and say why you're different. So there's a way to differentiate. Consistency. I want you to have a story, right? And I want you to be consistent in your product, your imaging, and what you're selling. So let's just take a car service. You know, you take your car for service, and you know, you go get the oil change, and one time you get it back and like they've washed the outside and they've cleaned the inside, it's all sparkling, it's beautiful, you're like, oh, this is amazing, I paid $49.99 and I got all this stuff done. And then you go back the next time and they don't wash the inside or wash the outside, and you're like, what the heck just happened? Like, you're totally disappointed. You've paid the same thing and it's not consistent. And that is like customer sentiment that is going to be really hard to get over. So you want it consistent across the board to justify the price, okay? The next thing is convenience. Now, sometimes, you know, you go to the closest store to them because it was just convenient, but sometimes you're gonna go somewhere else because they're offering special or unique products that you really want, you know? So where is the convenience in the price point? Customization. You know, this is a little bit interesting if you're in the food industry, because you could actually, you know, in really any industry, you can customize what you're selling to the same people, using different imaging and branding and different, you know, promotional materials. So like if you just take a quick like stir fry sauce example, you know, you could just label a stir fry sauce, or you could say this one is great on whitefish, and you could label it as like the whitefish stir fry sauce. You know, and you can highlight that, and all of a sudden you've opened it up to a whole other different level of customization that some people might be looking for. Characteristics. Now, these might be great on their own, the characteristics of your product. So, you know, if we talk about the bra, you know, the level of fabric, the number of material, the number of layers, that sort of thing. However, I don't want you to put a lot of emphasis on that as your product or your service, the characteristics, because those are easily replicated. Just like I said in the Gillette, the Mach 4, people can come out and replicate them. Okay, so I don't want you to base your price on the characteristics of your product. You think about like a computer, oh, this computer has four whatever terabytes of hard drive. Okay, well, like that is expired in the next 6 months because the next computers come out and they're 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and they're just double. So like what you based your whole selling proposition on, it's irrelevant now because people have just surpassed you. So don't base your product and your price on the characteristics of it. Combinations though are good. And combinations are great because if you understand your customer, you can expand or create or add onto a product line that will complement what you have. So for example, when we started, we used to sell these like not when we started, but halfway through, we got these Mad Mexican guacamole and pico de gallo dips that, just launched, and they were fantastic. These people from, are Mexican, made them in Canada, they're like amazing. Anyways, they saw an opportunity because there were no tortillas to go with it. They didn't have like the good, authentic Mexican chips. So like within a couple of years, they launched their whole line of chips to go with their dip. And so that's their complementary product, their combination product. And they listed them together and like, wow, automatic sales increase because all of a sudden you get everything together, right? So to sum up the differentiation, I want you to know how you're different from your competitors, okay? Because it's going to help you, charge the price that you want, okay? And go back to the customer, the value. Am I getting what I paid for, right? This is an open-ended question, but I really want you to answer it in your head with your product. So your product is not like everyone else's. And I keep reiterating this. It's not the same. I want you to find your advantage and I want you to find a way to price your product according to that, okay? And I want you to really emphasize why I should be buying your product over somebody else's. That should be front and center in all your business decisions. Why am I buying your product over somebody else's? And the price is going to match that. So price and performance, if you can manipulate that combination of things there, then you have a winning solution, right? It really comes down to the differences between your competitors and your customer's perspective. So I recently worked with a bakery that just started up, and they were all about, new, fresh, local. And when I went on their website, I couldn't find any of that information on their website. So to me, it was just another bakery. Why are you different from somebody else? If you're healthier, profess it. Like say, I only use real butter. I don't use the hydrogenated fats or whatever. Make all your branding and your price points around that. Okay. Again, you're not like everyone else's. So be unapologetic about it and build the strong arguments about it. So now that we've looked at how we're different, how we can compete, what we can do, there's 3 ways that you can price. Okay. You can go lower, higher, or the same as your competitors. Like really, when it comes down to that, those are your 3 options. Okay. Whichever way you go, there's pros and cons to each. Okay. But again, think about the reputation you want. Is a $300 bottle of wine really better than a $50 bottle of wine? It could just be the perception. It could just be people are assuming it's better because of the price point, but it really isn't. So that value and the way you want your brand to come off is where you need to focus. So I'm really curious, and I don't know if there's a way to do this really quickly, Alina, but I'm really curious if people are pricing like lower or higher or the same. So can we maybe put that in the chat? Because I'm curious to see where this comes out at. And while we're doing that, I'll go on to the next slide. So I got 11 new. We got it higher, same, lower. Okay, hold on, we got to hold it. Depends really. Okay, so service people can really do the depends because they tend to price on like the service business in each individual thing, right? Higher, same, higher. Okay. Lower, depends. Okay. Higher in 2024. Okay. So it's kind of, so a lot of it's higher, which is fine. That's great. Higher with better customer service. I love that. That's your differentiation, right? I'm higher, but you're going to pay more because I give you the best customer service. I've paid over, oh my God, you guys are hilarious. I paid over $130 on a bra. I love it. And I still have it 7 years later. See, the value is there. That's what you got to do on the bra. You just be like, it's $150, but it'll last you 10 years. Okay. Let's move on. So is your profit acceptable? So, you know, you can forecast out your costs and your sales, you know, just like we talked about. I often worked backwards, like I mentioned. You know, in my head, I would be like, okay, if I want to make $100,000 a year, this is where I need to get at in sales. This is where my costs need to be. And you work with that. Okay. If it's not acceptable, if you're not getting to the numbers that you want to get to, there's like lots of things you can do. Okay. You can change the product. You can change the price. You can do more add-ons like the Bad Mexican, like I talked about. You know, you can do things to get a higher premium. And you can also move to a different market or a segment. You know, maybe you're selling to a certain niche market that doesn't want to pay more than $5. But maybe if you move somewhere else in the city, you can sell it at $8 and people won't care. They think it's, you know, a great value at that price. So there's lots of things. Again, you know, you can change product, price. You can do add-ons. Oh, another add-on you could do like things like delivery or faster service or seasonal offerings. You know, like if you want to roll out something for the holidays, or, you know, we used to have a marketing calendar and we would roll out different things at different times of the years, depending on the marketing calendars, you know, to build branding and to drive additional profits, right? People will be like, oh, okay, I'll buy the St. Patrick's Day sausage that's green because we put spinach in it, right? Like it was gitchy and people loved it, you know, and all of a sudden they weren't buying green sausage when they came in, they were picking up a steak, but all of a sudden they walked out with 6 or 7 green sausages, you know? So those kind of things are like tricks you can do. Part 3, we are on to marking up for your channels, right? So now you've got a product or a service, you're offering it out there, and how do you mark it up? Okay. So historically, companies tend to, you know, operate off the list price, like that map that we mentioned earlier. They set one price and they stick to it. But I think I mentioned this before. Let's take a look at a Coca-Cola here. Okay. It's 35 degrees outside. Are you going to pay $4.99? You would never pay $4.99 for a bottle of Coke, but all of a sudden, because you're so hot, you know. However, if you're in a snowstorm in the Arctic, you're not going to pay $4.99 for an ice cold Coca-Cola. You want a hot cup of tea, not the other way around. So it's like very different, this type of pricing. And just the caveat, although I said, you know, you want to have a similar pricing, there's a lot of times where you don't want to have the same pricing. And this is called contextual pricing, right? This is when different factors will make people pay more or less for the same product. So let's just take Toronto. Downtown, when people are paying $150 a square foot, should that bottle of, you know, whitefish stir fry sauce not cost more than when they're uptown and it costs $30 for a store in rent to pay their square footage in rent? Very different costs on the same business. So technically it should be higher downtown, but does that mean you can get away with having it, you know, at a different price downtown? Some things you can, some things you can't. I will give you another example from my experience. Just like I said, we rolled out the knives. We also rolled out cookware online, like the Le Creuset, you know, those nice cast iron pans. We also sold those as well, right? To go with braising your beef, you get the cast iron pan. Well, we decided to sell them online and we put ship across Canada. Why not? We have them, we'll ship them. And this is like pre-Amazon. My number one customers were out of Yukon. You know why? Because nobody would ship to them because it would cost almost $40 to ship one of these pots. And guess what? My shipping was fixed at like $15 a pot. So I lost $35 in shipping charge on each pot. So these people in the Yukon were like, this is perfect. I'm not paying a premium for shipping to the Yukon. But it should be different. It should be different. I did another work for, another company. She was a makeup. She had a makeup brand. And I don't know if anybody knows that brand Healthy Planet, the grocery store. It's like a discount healthy store. Well, they were selling her product below her cost on her website. I'm like, you need to fix this. I understand they're a discount brand, but they shouldn't be selling it less than what you are. So, this contextual pricing is something that as a business always needs to be looked at and always needs to be adjusted. So when you're pricing across channels, different channels demand different pricing. So I'm looking at in-store versus online versus markets and pop-up shops, okay? So in stores, they typically want like a 30% margin at a minimum in store, right? You have to realize if you're selling into a store, they are taking their shelf space up for your product. They need it to sell. They need it to turn over, right? They need the sales on that. So you have to help the stores get those sales. Things you could do things like free fills. I want you to really take my product. I'm willing to give you a case of everything to put it on the shelf. You just see how it goes. I had a gentleman do that with me with his line of like coconut stuff from South America. And I was like, I don't really need another coconut sugar. I don't need another coconut water. He's like, no, you just take it. I'm going to give you a free fill. You try it out. Well, then he did that and it sold because obviously I put it at a reduced price because he gave it to me for free. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to gouge everybody on this. So I reduced price. And then he realized that it was selling so well, probably because of cheap price. So then he kept giving it to me at the same price, which meant that it was like $2 cheaper than the competitive one on the shelf. So he just stayed. I sold so much of his product just from that initial, free fill startup. Online. Shipping and additional packaging is a huge concern. When we started shipping to customers, we would pay almost $25 for picking and packaging and handling to get a grocery order to somebody's house. That is huge. When you go online grocery shopping now, if anybody does that, you're paying like maybe $7 or $8, right? It's probably costing them $20 to $30 to pick and pack your order. Now, they've gotten smart. They've changed some of the pricing on the site versus in the shop to make up for that, right? But, those are some of the things that you need to think about. You don't need to offer free shipping to people. Free shipping, for the most part, doesn't really make sense. I think your shipping, if you're going to sell things online, shipping should be cheaper than it takes somebody to drive to you and get the product, right? Or pay for parking or take the bus to get there. So that is how I think you should gauge your shipping. And then if it's making you lose money, well, then, you need to adjust your online pricing as a result of that. Okay. Web stuff also costs money. There's staff to facilitate it. There's maintenance, there's marketing for your site. It's not a low cost option as well. So something to keep in the back of your mind. And the last thing is like markup pop-up shops and one-of-a-kind shows. So these shows and these type of events, there tends to sometimes be a huge cost to get into some of these shows. We did the Green Living show for a couple of years, and I think it was like $5,000 for the weekend to get in. I had to sell an awful lot of, I think we were selling pulled pork sandwiches at that point. I had to sell a lot of those to make up $5,000 on the weekend, just the entrance to the show. So factor those things in when you are deciding which channels you should be selling across, right? I have a lot of examples. I have more examples. Okay, I'll tell you another one. We used to sell cheese. I would get cheese from a local farmer in Elora. I would sell it in my shop, and then she would go to the farmer's market down the street from me every Thursday. She didn't charge the same retail price as me. So people would go to the store, excuse me, they would go to the farmer's market and buy it for $4 or $5 cheaper than when I was selling it in the store. So that doesn't work. So I had a little discussion with her because I'm like, you can't do this because you're taking my customers away and going to the market. So again, these are all things to consider when you're rolling stuff out. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
We're good for now.
Okay. Oh, do I have a fintech case study for pricing? No, but if you want to connect after, we can figure one out. Okay. Steps to get into stores. I'll just read this really quick because I don't think too many of you are trying to get into stores, but you want to make sure your product fits in the store. I used to have people come in. I was an organic specialty retailer that focused on organic or was local or as clean as possible products. And then I would have people coming in trying to sell me Doritos. I'm like, you are got the wrong store here. So, don't even waste people's time. Make sure it fits. Get the email address of the buyer, send them a package, sell sheet economics, like high quality photos, make sure all of those things are great. If people are interested, you can go and drop off samples of the product. And you should always be looking like 3 to 6 months in advance. Everything takes time. And even if it's like a small independent shop, it will still take time to get into the store. So keep that in mind. Some ways to get into stores, and this could be any type of retail stores. I mentioned some free fills. I mentioned case discounts or intro discounts, ongoing discounts. You know, my coconut water guy, he kept saying, I'm going to keep giving it to you at this discounted price. Demonstrations are fantastic. So, you know, even if you're, I mean, I think a ton of you with your products that I've seen come across here tonight, I think demonstrations and things like that are fantastic. And if you don't want to go into places, you should be rolling that into your social media stuff, is to do demonstrations of your products via video on your website, right? That what a better way for people to learn about your products than seeing you use it, right? Bundling promos. This is like a great idea for things like, you know, certain products, right? So I had a gentleman, you know, I was working with, and he was barbecue sauces, and he would have a pack at his farmer's market. We just go there and people could pick 6 different kinds and fill up the case pack of his barbecue sauce, right? And it was 6, but you got one free, you know, instead of paying for all 6, you got one free, and people just bought quantity then, and then, you know, would go give them to somebody else. And it was like a way to get some great marketing as well, right? And then hooks, you know, the hooks are even things like simple, like a coupon for a second return, like to come back and return to the store at a later date and get this. Like, people still use those, believe it or not, and they love them. So testing. We talked about, you know, the factors going into your pricing, and now I want you to test them, okay? I don't think just because you set a price, it needs to be set across the board and you don't need to change it, okay? I want you to test your prices. And, you know, you should go to different places and try them out at different price points before you finalize it, okay? You might have more sales at a reduced price point. You might have less at a higher. That sort of thing, you can play around with it. Online, you can also test too, right? Do you sell more or less at different price points, okay? Just keep in mind that you want, you know, that value to be there, why people are buying your product, okay? There might be that magic tipping point between, you know, $130 or $140 being too much, right? Or then when you add the shipping onto it, you know, you're at the $150 and people don't like that because it seems so much more expensive than the $125. Test it out. You don't have to set everything from the get-go. I think this is my last slide. Yes, it is. Okay. How to move forward. Listen, I think, you know, with tonight, you've got a full understanding of your costs, okay, variable, fixed, or other. Take a look at all of those. I want you to understand your competition, your pricing, why your product is different from others, okay? Really important, because that's going to drive your business decisions. From there, that is going to determine how you're marketing and how you're promoting your product, okay? And then it's going to determine your various channels for selling, right? Whether you're in store, online, combo of both. And you're going to come up with some mix of all of those things on that slide there to come up with the most profitable scenario for you. And like I said, you know, constantly analyze, constantly reevaluate and adjust. It's going to be changing all of the time. And that's okay. That's what business is about. This is my last slide. That is my email up there. If anybody has any questions after the fact and wants to reach out to me, that's my email. And that is it. And now we are open for even more questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Tara. That was super helpful. And, you know, like I'm looking at the chat and everybody's so appreciative of this session. So thank you for that. Perfect. So we'll open the floor for questions. You can put it in the chat, or you can honestly just unmute yourself and ask the question. All right, I think folks are mulling over all the information, Tara, that you shared. So while they do that, I have a quick question for you. What would you, in your experience, what would you say, what are some common mistakes founders make when they're setting their prices?
You know, I say this I feel like I say it all the time, but people tend to feel bad when their pricing doesn't match somebody else, right? And that's what I really wanted to get across tonight, is that your product isn't the same. You know, it doesn't have to be the same. You don't have to justify it. You know, it goes back to my ground beef example, right? Like, I didn't even know what to say to people when the ground beef price didn't match. And I don't want you to. Like, I want you to come up with your really good justification as to why your price is the way it is and be unapologetic about it, and you go with it. You know, it's different, right? Your product is not the same.
Got it. Goldie, go ahead.
Thank you so much for your knowledge, your experience, your expertise. It's definitely valuable, and I can tell you're speaking from a place of experience and just reflection. One question I have that seems to come up often with my clients is the economy. How do you price within an economy that is experiencing their own financial burdens, but yet the service you provide really solves their issue, right? But a lot of people are in the mindset of survival, so it's like getting by and just doing what they can. I have a premium service, whereas I can guarantee a lot of things for people. I can give them a lot of solutions, but I find myself at a bridge when it comes to them, and they're like, well, this part is cheaper because, and at least it solves like 20% of my problems, which is just enough to get by. I guess what would you suggest with someone who has a premium service but is in alignment with a market that isn't thinking premium?
Right. So that's where you have to change the marketing side of what you're doing, right? I will take care of all of these problems at this price point, and you just hit it on the nail. Yes, it might be slightly more expensive, but you're going to get a better result in the end. And that's where you have to send that messaging out there.
And in terms of I guess, making sales and developing business, what are some alternatives maybe you suggest when it comes to pricing? Because I do believe everything you're saying. Like, I feel like I'm a Chanel brand, a Rolls Royce person. Like, this is the price, and I'm very confident in the results it will get you. However, there comes the time where you got to pay the rent and the overheads and things like that. So I find myself doing off costs or off services just to make like the rent or the things for the business in the meantime, where I know this product should be positioned in a higher point range.
Yeah. So we had something very similar in 2008 with the financial crisis. All of our customers all of a sudden lost, a big chunk of their disposable income because they potentially like lost their jobs or whatever. And so how do you as a premium brand go around that? So we actually brought in a line of beef that was cheaper. It was, I'm just telling you my personal experience. It was antibiotic free and hormone free, but it wasn't certified organic. So it was all slightly less. We did that for probably a couple years, and I think it hurt our brand more in the end than it helped. The reason being is, yes, although we didn't lose some of those initial sales because some people adjusted, it confused our brand and made it really hard for people going forward to see. So in retrospect, I would have rather had less sales and not confuse the brand for many years thereafter. So with your particular situation, it's very similar. It's how do you survive in that meantime? And I think you have to hold true to the brand, the image, and the product that you're selling, and just keep pushing that correct story versus trying to diminish it.
I agree. Thank you so much for validating.
It'll come, right? It'll work. Yeah.
I believe you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Amazing. A couple of questions in the chat as well. So Faria is asking, are there any templates you'd suggest to calculate the costs in developing a pricing strategy? That's the first part. And the second is, would you suggest price testing with discount or change the price completely?
Okay, templates to calculate the cost. Yeah, there are tons of different templates. Sorry, what industry are we talking about right now?
Faria was retail.
Retail food?
No, she was the one who's running, making the bras.
Oh, that was the bras. Okay. So yeah, I can't think of a template, but if you go to like my the little one that I had in my presentation for Excel, you're gonna basically replicate one for like buttons, thread, fabric, padding. Like you're gonna put all of those things in, and you're gonna develop your own. I'm sure you could look up like fashion clothing design template and see what you can find. Okay, so that takes care of that first part of the question there. To develop a pricing strategy, so I mean that those costs are going to come from that. And would you suggest price testing with discount or change the price completely? Okay, so if you have an idea of where you think your price is going to be, I would set the price and discount it to start testing the pricing. So let's say you want it to be $130, let's just say, but you want to see how things are going at 120 or 110 or 150. Like, well, I guess you can't go more than the you go more than the price that you put on there. But I would do like an introductory pricing. Those things are always easy to get around. Like our first customers, try them and give us your feedback. And that's the way I would roll it out, as like an intro pricing. So that way it's not a permanent discount. That way people aren't expecting it, and it's very particular to the launch of the product.
Okay, thank you. Alice is asking, how do your startup costs impact your first year? Was that part of how you calculated your margins in the first year?
Yeah. Okay, so startup costs should not impact your margin, because startup costs are coming after the margin line. Okay, so the margin is just what it's costing you to produce or create that particular service that you're offering. A startup cost to me is something that is going to be used in the life of the business or for a longer period of time, like computers or office equipment or production material. And those things are spread out over the cost of the years that you're producing. So if you wanted to get really specific with your margins and your costs, yes, you could hypothetically take your startup costs and attribute those to a portion of each thing that you're producing. However, you're going to open up a whole can of worms in terms of the assumptions. And, I'll give you an example. In my case, we would buy a sausage machine, and it was a piece of equipment, and it would potentially last us 5 years. If we did, 2 batches per day for 5 years, I guess I could hypothetically divide that piece of machinery up amongst every single batch of sausages. And that would give me a really, really, really accurate cost on that front. Most people don't do it that way because they tend to consider those costs as part of, they just don't, because they don't vary between the batches. But if you really wanted an accurate cost of how much it costs you to produce something, you could potentially do that. So that being said, is that going to change your margins in year 1 and year 2 and year 5? Again, most people don't do things like that, so it's not going to change the margins in those years. What you're going to have to do, though, is when you're forecasting and planning, is you're going to have to keep in your mind that come year 5, I'm going to have to potentially replace that machinery and need to save enough to be able to do that replacement, right?
Got it. Thanks. Wang, you said you had a question, so you can perhaps just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hi, hello. Yeah, so yeah, I have this question because right now I'm doing the beef jerky, which is a CPG brand, consumer packaged goods. Yeah, so my struggle is that of course the retailer will charge a lot of the markups, and also the delivery, everything. So right now I'm calculating my profit margin is about 15%, 1.5. I'm not sure whether it is healthy because I'm just, the second year of this business. Um, it seems to me that is a little bit low because I haven't calculated any like a marketing cost or anything. So it's just to making the goods plus distribution plus the markups from the retailers. Some retailers I find some online e-commerce website they only charge like a 25%. Some the supermarkets they charge like 30%, 35%, even 40%. So I give them like a $5 one pack of beef jerky. They are selling at 8.99, 9.99 something. So yeah, so I'm not sure how whether it is healthy, whether it is everybody is the same, or what is the average in the market. That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, there's a whole lot of questions in that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you can charge people different pricing if you want, right? But I'm not surprised that people are buying it from you at $5 and selling it at $8.99 or $9.99. That makes sense to me. When you said you're making 15% on the bottom line, I guess I don't know if that's a lot or not, depending on how much you're potentially actually making yourself. And then if you take out like 2 to 5% for marketing, which you say you're not paying for, then that reduces your bottom line to, let's say, 10%. And then I don't know if you're charging for delivery and, like I said, your own wage in there. And so all of those things are coming out. So I think what you need to do is I think you need to take your numbers that where you have them now, and you need to build out a bit of a model, like a 2 month, 4 month, 6, 8, a year, 2 years, maybe 2 years at the most, and see where the numbers get when you start adding in, some of those delivery costs and some labor for you, and add in some marketing, and see where you come out at. Because I think that will help you determine if your pricing makes sense or not. Does that make sense?
Yes. So right now, I'm saying this 15% is already calculate delivering and also the cost of goods, everything. It's just I don't. It's just like I don't do too much of the marketing. So yeah. So that's the situation.
Okay. Well, is 15% enough to cover your marketing and a profit?
Yeah, that's right.
Is it, I mean, I'm asking the question, is that enough?
Yeah, it's more than enough.
Okay, then you're fine then, right? If you're happy with the profit and it covers all the expenses, then don't worry about it. You're good.
Yeah, it's just at a initial startup stage, so that's surviving. Yeah.
Yeah, but the profit will come once you sell more in volume, right? So
That's right. That's right.
volume, it's a volume business. So
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Dana, go for it.
Hey, Tara, thank you so much for the presentation. My question is, what was your main reason for leaving the corporate job? Or was it just a dream to become an entrepreneur in the future?
Oh, I don't like, I was just there and I was working really hard and I had no control over my own time and how I was working. And I thought, I just thought if I did something for myself and I worked this hard, imagine what I could possibly do. And that was it.
Thank you.
Entrepreneurial spirit was born.
Thank you. And just to add to the second question, like if you were able to go back in the past to the beginning of your startup, would you change anything about it?
Yes, I would. Of course I would. But that's like such a loaded question. I do a lot of work helping businesses like with their financing and stuff and like raising money. And there was one point where I remember people came in and they, we were hot and young and they loved our product, and they're like, oh, we want to give you more money to grow and expand. And we couldn't wrap our head around what we were even doing. Like, I don't even think we had recipes yet at this point, you know? And I probably should have taken the money. I probably should have taken the money and then figured it out, but we didn't. So that's probably my biggest regret.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Those were some good questions. All right. Do we have more questions, folks?
Oh, Jacqueline asked, how do you calculate cost of goods sold? So I don't know if she's still on the phone, if she can give me her industry really quick, and then I can give her a brief rundown.
Jacqueline, let me just quickly.
Hi.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm in a bakery business.
Bakery?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So perfect. So if you, I don't know if you were there at the start of the presentation, but Alina has it, and I think she's sending it around. There was a slide on cost of goods sold, and I used like a sausage example. So as a bakery, you're going to have like a list of all your ingredients: flour, baking powder, sugar, whatever, yeast. All of those things are your cost of ingredients, and you're going to do those for every single one of the products that you make.
Yeah, I missed the first part because I came late.
Sorry, you cut out there on me for a second.
Sorry, I missed the first part because I came late.
Oh, okay. It is in there, and it's in the slide, and there's like a full example of it. So just work that through for some of your products that you make in the bakery, and my email's on there too. If you want to run something by me too, just email me later, and I can double check it for you.
Okay, I will do. Thanks.
And Jacqueline, I'll be sending the recording tomorrow, so you can review whatever you've missed at the beginning.
Thank you.
Tara, Goldie wants to know would love to know what support you are available to give. Do you do mentorship on the side or
I
consultation?
do. Yeah, I do part-time work helping businesses. So yeah, if she's interested, she can reach out.
Perfect. So Goldie, Tara's email is on the presentation deck. You can take it from there and reach out to her. Amazing. Let me just quickly scan through the chat just to make sure I haven't missed any question. And while I do that, Tara, as an entrepreneur yourself, if you have one resource that you can share with the group here, it could be a book, a podcast, whatever helped you when you were starting off your journey. It could be like a best practice as well.
You know, Alina, you're asking me hard questions at the end of my presentation. This is not fair now. Honestly, I think the best thing for people is if you're industry specific, is to reach out to others in your industry. I know you tend to consider people in the same industry as competition, but I really don't think that they are. So, you know, in the grocery world, there was a lot of grocery events and like a grocery magazine, and you got tricks and tricks of the trade and like upcoming knowledge on those sorts of things. So, you know, I know Y-Space offers lots of group sessions, but, you know, like Markham was on the call. I work for the city of Vaughan. You know, there's all these different chamber of commerce and places out there to go and connect with people. And I think that really helps. Even when you're, I mean, people in your industry are obviously great, but, you know, having other entrepreneurs and people around with you to connect with, to just share and ask ideas, I think it's really helpful.
I love that. That's great advice. Wonderful. Yeah, collaboration over competition. Amazing. Perfect. I think we're all caught up on questions.
Amazing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tara, for taking out the time. Honestly, this was so amazing in terms of we've been getting so many requests to do a session on pricing, and I felt like you covered all the points, all the questions that we've ever had, we've been asked.
Amazing.
So thank you. Really appreciate you taking out the time and putting in the effort for the presentation. Really appreciate your knowledge and expertise.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I hope everybody has a good night, and thank you for your time. And yeah. Reach out if you need anything.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. See you next Tuesday.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you.